This video, we're going to cover an interesting example of someone who's worked in the corporate world and how they've kind of had enough of it and what they're doing to plan for quitting corporate America. Let's listen to a strategy here.
Chasing minimalism. Instead of chasing after more, I am focusing on needing less. Well, by simplifying my life and reducing unnecessary expenses, I'm able to save more and stress less. I know, shocker. I've mended dresses for the summer instead of buying new clothes. I cook most, if not all, of my meals, and I don't buy alcohol when going out unless it's on special occasions. Hello, my dear. Yes, I will pet you. I've declined expensive dinners with friends and suggested a home cooked meal or an active activity for quality taking the toll roads. I fill my gas up at Costco, where I also buy in bulk, and I've halted subscriptions and learned how to do certain beauty treatments at home. Making these moves helped highlight how much of my paycheck was going to non-productive activities. Now, don't get me wrong, I still indulge on a case-by-case basis because I don't want to be a dull girl, and I don't believe in making my life a living hell by way of restriction, but I'm much more mindful of my financial goals and how careless spending can make it harder to achieve them. And I'm sure all of these decisions seem very small from an isolated point of view, but when you put together, they have resulted in a lot of cost savings. I was spending $8 a day on toll roads driving to work, $50 for drinks when I go out. And all these little things allow me to increase the amount I'm saving for my living expenses for once I leave corporate, okay?
What's quite interesting here is how she's taking the first step. And the first step here is cutting costs, focusing on having more freedom in terms of her time, cutting back on expenses, cooking, mending clothes, doing meal prep, things like that. See, people are more attuned to adapting for their freedom, particularly after the whole lockdown situation where people realize how much they value their time and their freedom from their corporate job. They can't necessarily be fooled by consumerism anymore. She's not really too interested in going out, spending money, drinking, things like that, because people are kind of exhausted by all these little costs that do add up. She mentioned the $8 toll rolls every day, $50 on drinks. And the thing is, it's quite interesting because I worked in corporate jobs where they can be quite judgmental if you're not the type of person to go out quite frequently, spend money on work drinks and buying, $8 beers, things like that, or £8 beers, things like that. You're not too keen on spending money and going out on the weekend to whatever the latest trendy thing is, the theatre show, whatever that would be. And it's interesting how when you pursue your freedom, the normies, the NPCs, they tend to judge you for it. If you're paying down your mortgage early, pursuing freedom like that, because you're not participating in the same kind of rigged game they are, whether they realize it or not, of being a consumer, they can judge you for it. But it's good she's taking these options to quit corporate America by planning ahead. It's all about saving your money and avoiding wasting money and being in the trap that many other people are, where they have a narrow skill set, only certain type of jobs they can get, and they're really kind of shackled like a slave to their corporate job. It's important to understand, the difference between the normie mainstream society and how they operate, which really is a slave system, which is becoming quite obvious to a lot of us now, with the debt and the wage, being a wage debt slave essentially, and thinking outside the box. It's very important to be able to separate yourself from the cringe masses by cutting your costs.
Multiple income streams. Relying on a single job is very risky in today's economy. I've had multiple people close to me experience job loss lately, and the job market is really kind of crazy right now. A year ago, it seemed like workers were calling the shots, and jobs were just falling out of the sky. But now things are a little bit more precarious. So I'm building multiple income streams through side hustles and investments. Now I know what you're thinking. If money was that easy to come by, then me, wouldn't be in this predicament that I'm in now. And I agree with you. I mean, you see, I haven't quit my job yet, but this is the perfect time for me to experiment with other methods of earning money while I'm still gainfully employed. I'm just not one of them, I was so fed up, I quit my job on a whim type people. Love y'all. I love y'all's content. And the go getter in me recognize the go getter in you, but I can't do it. Okay. I'm trying to set myself up to have a much less stressful transition into self employment. And if I leave my job prematurely and end up in a situation to have to live and pay off debts, that's just a way bigger burden on myself financially and stressfully. So in this whole overemployed working season, I have 3 rules for myself while I'm working full time and side hustling. The first one is do one thing to pamper myself every week. I love me a good face mask and bubble bath, throwing a good meal, a little Fortnite action, a good phone call with friends, and I'm elated. Okay. I also schedule my fitness classes to make sure I'm prioritizing my health and releasing tension in my body as well. The second rule is not to put myself down if things don't go my way. Accepting that failure is part of the process and journey, and using each setback as a lesson, baby. It's just how it's got to be. And then the third one is have fun, enjoy the process, and spend time with my friends. Okay.
In terms of embracing volatility, right? So this is what we're focused on here in terms of the learning curve. Now, the learning curve would be developing new skills. And like I said, when it comes to embracing volatility, you have to accept that if you're pursuing self-employment, you're giving up the stability of the 9 to 5, right? You're giving up the stable monthly paycheck. You might have some months where you're quite financially successful and a quiet period where you need to live below your means and save up from the money where you did have successful months to get you through the rough months. It's things like that. It's planning ahead is quite tough, and that's what you need to do if you want to take that more responsible approach of being self-employed. Now, in terms of, side hustles, investments, it takes time to decide between what that solution is for you and how to balance that with multiple income streams, as you mentioned, because you might have some investments that are generating monthly income for yourself, and then having a side business which could be working out. Like I say, could have slow months, good months, you never know. You have to embrace that volatility by expanding your options from that perspective. And she makes a good point here, going back to minimalism, of relaxing and enjoying life for low cost. Everything doesn't have to cost a lot of money. Focusing on health is wealth, where she mentions, some self-care things you would do. And that's quite true. You can have a low-cost gym membership. You can spend time in nature, going to parks. There's many low-cost ways of enjoying life that don't involve spending $50 or $100 or more going to expensive drinks that aren't necessarily good for you. Now, when you are taking that step away from the corporate world, you have to embrace volatility, right? And that's failure, learning lessons of things going well, sometimes not going well. And it's interesting because when you learn lessons through your self-employment journey, is you kind of are not ruined by one mistake, as long as it's not too big, right? As long as you're careful and you take a cautious, calculated risk approach. But I realized in the corporate world, it's quite interesting how they can completely destroy you in a particular company for one mistake. They can construct any narrative they want. You can make one small mistake in your corporate job. They can overanalyze it and blow it out of proportion, and then just say in one meeting or in your annual review, this is a big issue and that it's really bad for your career, and you make one more mistake and they'll fire you, or just basically build a narrative that isn't too much in your favor. So it's interesting, when you're learning lessons kind of the hard way by yourself in self-employment, sometimes that can be more fulfilling and more of a lesson learned rather than being scolded, which you might be at work for making one mistake or here or there.
Time. With all of these to-dos, tasks, and side gigs, time is ultimately the limiting factor. I found ways to maximize the time that I do have while preserving time and energy for the things that keep me sane. As an entrepreneur, work never stops. While I'm in the season of being unemployed, I'm putting a lot of intention on how I can accomplish my goals without becoming a complete recluse. I am a little reclusive. Or a sleep-deprived zombie. I pretty much use weekdays as much as possible to work, to give myself something to look forward to during the week. Like I said, I will schedule my workout classes, so I'm pushing myself to be active in a way that I enjoy. I spend roughly an hour and a half on Sunday prepping a few meals for the upcoming week, #meal prep. Since I don't buy lunch at work or pay for dinner in the evenings, having a few meals prepared helps me so much with time. And on offers more for me is social outings, because I like to have my weekends free to work on my side hustles. I don't really look forward to staying up late at night at the bars, so my friends that are in school or studying or on a similar path are the ones that I see the most, because they're down to meet up at a coffee shop or for a work date or cook a meal at home or go for a walk in the evening. So those are the friendships that seem to be the most fitting in this stage of my life.
That brings us on to our final point, which is time management. It's important to manage time because when you're working a corporate job and you're trying to build something on the side, you have to really think carefully about how you're managing your time. For many people, and I would advise this as a first step, is try to put all your chores on weekdays. So when you get your work done, you go home, you do your meal prep on a Monday night, maybe on a Wednesday night, and then on Tuesdays, Thursdays, you keep your flat tidy or your apartment wherever you live, or do your food shopping. So Monday through Friday, every evening you're doing something productive. So when your Saturday morning hits, you don't have a weekend full of chores to do. You can just spend Saturday and Sunday spending some time maybe working out, focus on a side business for like 12 to 14 hours that day. And your weekends are completely clear because all your weeknights are busy doing your corporate job and taking care of all your chores. Now, it depends on who you are and how that works for you, but the whole the key thing is managing your time, so you're not necessarily wasting any time. You're not wasting any time at work, even though you might want to, because you're just kind of working efficiently so you can leave on time. You're not necessarily doing it just to keep your manager happy, which isn't necessarily a big motivator these days. She mentions, meal prepping and things like that to save money and developing a good skill. And this is something I'm actually covering in some of my future videos. If you want to retire early, you need to kind of develop other skills and be kind of a broad person. Well, what I mean by that, a broad skill set, is that you need to be as self-sufficient as you can. And things like being a good cook to make food yourself, to maybe take care of the DIY things around your house rather than paying people to fix lights, to build things in your house, do basic DIY and construction. These are little things you can do to save money and be more focused on self-sufficiency and self-employment, because you're not so dependent on paying people to do things that you could technically do yourself. And in terms of time management, many people who work corporate jobs, they're not happy, they do reverse bedtime procrastination, which basically means people aren't happy with their work day, they're not happy working their jobs, they end up staying up quite late and kind of being tired throughout the day, and throughout the evening, late evening, they're kind of doing whatever they want, or just wasting time on the internet, or just talking with their friends for the sake of it, because they kind of, in a passive aggressive subconscious way, want to lash out against their job, so they kind of stay up late to live their life quite late in the evenings. So what's better than that is, of course, like I say, using your evenings productively after your corporate job, so you can spend your weekends focusing on your side hustle. And a key thing to finish up on here is enjoying the process, right? It's important to enjoy the process, to keep you going, to keep you motivated, to, in some cases, staying on the corporate job, sticking to the corporate ladder, because you want to earn that money, save it, invest it, so you can live life on your own terms, whether that's taking a career break and having a year gap in terms of your job, or focused on building your own dream, right? And it's important to enjoy the process, because there will be downsides sometimes. You might have quiet months when you are self-employed. You might have times where you're not feeling too good, you're kind of regretting things. I know people who've kind of pursued self-employment, and then all of a sudden there are moments where they see their friends or family members who might be working in a standard corporate job, and maybe they own a lot of property, maybe they've got a fancy job title, they fit in with society. You have to be prepared when you do take that step out to be self-employed. You're going to be outside the traditional game, and sometimes that can pay off dramatically. Sometimes you may be operating by a completely different set of rules, or making up your own set of rules. How much do you want to work? How much free time do you want to have? What are your financial goals? So it's really a whole different game you're playing when you do quit corporate America because you're not happy with it. And you need to think carefully about having a strong perception of yourself, a strong concept of yourself, of who you are and what you want, and so you don't feel regretful if you do make that choice. So this is a very important example to learn from. She's taking her first steps out the system. If you are taking your first steps out the corporate job, let me know in the comments how you feel about that, or what your long-term plans are. I've worked in the finance industry for over a decade, sales and trading, investment banking roles, Goldman Sachs, Morgan Stanley, and many other top companies. And I offer career advice, link in description if you want to speak with me directly. Thanks for listening. Hope you learned from this. Cutting your costs, embracing the volatility, and being effective with time management are 3 top tips from this video. 2 recommended videos on the screen right now, and I'll see you next time.